Yo, what's up? So, I just got this air shock from Morocco, I think is how you pronounce the name. It's just like a cheaper sort of Amazon air shock with a coil spring on there. So, this thing has a 550-pound spring, and I am installing this on my Movcan V30 Pro Max, which is very dirty right now because I rode a bunch of dirt with it today. Replacing this shock back here that comes stock on it. Honestly, like, especially if you're doing any dirt riding, like, it's just not adequate enough for that type of riding because there's no damping of any kind. All this is just a spring. There's no gas, there's no hydraulic fluid, to my knowledge, in here. So if you hit a bump, especially if you're somebody as light as me, which is around 160 pounds, instead of it just compressing, springing up, and then settling, it compresses, springs up, and then kind of does that number. And then it finally settles. So it's very springy. So hopefully this shock will remedy that. I got this thing on a Prime Day sale, so it was $70 shipped to my house. Not bad. So yeah, let's get into installing this thing. Alrighty, so for this, I'm just tipping over the bike slowly and then putting one of these wheel chocks just right along the wheel right here, just to keep it from moving forward, because that pedal that is currently supporting the backside of it is going to want to spin around, and then it's going to want to try to drop this entire thing and then drop handlebars down, and then you're going to smack your lever. So yeah, just chalking that. Super simple. Just remove these two Allen screws here. They are 5mm Allens. And also, obviously, don't take these screws out with the suspension completely loaded, otherwise the entire back end of this bike is just going to smash against the backside of your fender, and yeah, have this suspension decompressed when you're doing this. Yeah, these little guys, there's a washer on the other side. Keep that. Or I think what I'm going to do is actually replace this with a compression washer, because the bottom side of this thing worked its way loose again. It didn't fall out this time, but it did come loose, so I'm going to try some compression washers on there. But anyway, I'm going to take this Allen, and then I'm going to use that to push this out. Now the swing arm is just going to swing free. You know, it's going to do its thing. Free bird. I guess now's the time to also check the tightness of the swing arm, which I actually loosened up, or the bolt itself, sort of the swing arm, prior to this. Otherwise this would be creaking like crazy because it comes too tight from the factory, so it actually gets bound up and it creaks all over the place. So yeah, check that. But now I can remove the shock. There was also a washer in here somewhere that they used to take up the gap. Anyways, moving on to the shock. So the first thing that you want to do when you're setting up a shock is to set the preload. If we compress this down too much, then if you're a lighter rider, then it's going to be way too pogo stick-like, and you also lose travel. So you don't want the spring to be too stiff, otherwise you're going to be at the very top of the travel, and as soon as you hit a bump, you're just going to bang. It's just going to compress a little bit, then it's going to slingshot up, and then it's just going to reach a bottom out point up here, and then all that energy is going to release, go into your frame, and then it's going to spring you off the seat. Which, if you have a properly rated spring, then you would sit probably somewhere in the middle of the range. So if it were to compress and then rebound back upwards, then it's not going to completely, I guess, top out the shock, if that makes any sense. So it's actually going to go to there, and then it's going to go and settle back down here, rather than just completely compressing and then boom, fully extending, and then it just sends the rest of that energy essentially to your butt, and it hurts quite a bit. So yeah, we're going to set the preload first. I'm going to back out these adjusters all the way, which there's a plus and a minus on here. So usually it's counterclockwise. Should be the least amount of damping. So we're going to just back that out all the way. I'm assuming this is the compression. Yep, and then rebound is on the bottom here. So I'm going to back that out as well. And I'm going to set the spring, let's see, probably somewhere about halfway compressed, I would say. The spring on the shock itself is actually not as bad as this one. This one is a 650 pound spring, 650 pound per inch spring, which this one is a 550 pound per inch spring. Don't know if you really see that. So this should also be better for riders such as myself around the 160 range versus this, because I mean this is just, yeah, no, it gets the job done but not very well. So yeah, let's continue on with this. The stock one is a little bit thinner, this one's thicker overall, but I did test fit it in here and it does work. I might need to move the wiring over a little bit more just so that the shock spring itself doesn't actually rub against that, but yeah, we'll see. Okay, and then as for these little dowels here, so I was contemplating using some Red and Tacky from Lucas, but I think what I'm going to do is go with Super Lube first, because Super Lube itself is, to my understanding, it's sort of like dielectric grease. It's thin, but it's also safe on plastic and rubber, stuff like that. This stuff should do a lot better with these plastic bushings and not degrade them in time versus the Red and Tacky, which is a lithium, or it's a red lithium grease, but it also does contain petroleum in it as well, which can over time degrade rubber and potentially plastic as well. So yeah, just going to start with this stuff first. Of course, checking this here, so this one's not flush. Yeah, it looks like it'll sit flush. That's interesting. That almost looks like something for a grease insert, or no? Oh no, that's to rebuild it, I think. That's to take off the lower, this little Allen down here. Or it looks like an Allen. And then with that, the rollers and the bushings are installed onto the shock. Alrighty, and then we can slide this in here. As you can see, there is a little bit of a clearance issue with the cables, but not enough to really do too much. So let's just put this in here, see if this lines up. And I'm also going to put some spring washers on the other side where this attaches, just so that it doesn't come out again, because nobody wants that. And I could put some blue Loctite on this too. Alright. Goes in there. Find an appropriately sized compression washer here, which looks pretty good. That's an M8. Alright, this compression washer, and then normal washer, flat washer. Alright, that should be tight enough. Hopefully this fits. My goodness. Hey, there we go. Alright, same thing as the other side, compression washer, flat washer. And I already put a little bit of grease on this when I put this back together. It's not entirely necessary, but Figure it would kind of help out, at least with sliding this back in. Alright, and with that, the shock is installed. Yeah, so far, just first impressions without even riding it, I can already tell that this is going to feel a lot nicer on dirt and, as well as the road. Obviously, going to have to dial in the rebound and the compression settings on it, but overall it seems like just with the adjuster a little bit lower than half, seems to be around the right preload on this shock for my given weight, since it does go down to about the halfway mark. Say it's somewhere in the middle of the range, so I would think that that would be fine. And then I could just dial in the shock settings for that. Yeah, thank you for coming along with me on this journey to replace this shock. Yeah, I'll let you guys know how it feels and everything. I'll actually have to do a legit ride video on this thing in order to show you guys the bike itself, as well as how well the shock is on this particular bike. I can already tell it's going to be just perfect. Perfect. Anyways, God bless you guys. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.